pro wrestling isn't just about the punches, slams, and smack talk. It's a whole undercover world of secret hand signals that you never even noticed. Forget what you thought you knew about WWE. Behind the scenes, the matches you watch are filled with coded messages passed between the wrestlers, referees, and even the commentators. They've been hiding this right in front of your eyes. If you've ever caught a wrestler flashing a weird gesture mid-match and thought nothing of it, think again. These signals are a language all their own, designed to keep matches running smoothly, avoid injuries, and even change the outcome on the fly. From calling the next move to signaling for a quick ending, these aren't random gestures. They're the silent cues that control the very rhythm of the show. In this wild, high-energy world, wrestlers and referees have developed ways to communicate without saying a word. Ever wondered how they silently let each other know if someone is really hurt? Or if they're just playing up an injury for the storyline? Or how they call for a change in a move on the fly without the audience catching on? It's all part of the language of wrestling, and if you're not paying close attention, you'll miss the signs entirely. So let's crack the code and explore some of these silent signals. But fair warning, once you spot these cues, there's no going back. Kinda like when someone points out WWE's fast camera cuts, and now you can't unsee them. Yeah, it's like that. These hidden gestures between wrestlers and refs are subtle but critical, and they happen right before your eyes. So now that you're learning the ropes, pun intended, let's dive a little deeper so that you can spot these hidden exchanges yourself. You'll never watch pro wrestling the same way again once you start noticing these behind-the-scenes signals. Just like those tricky camera cuts, you're in for a whole new viewing experience. The dreaded X. Let's start with injury signals. If a wrestler is genuinely hurt and needs help, there are secret hand movements or cues they use to let the ref know. But here's the cool part. If they're okay, even if it looked like they just got slammed into next week, there are signals for that too. The ref will often check in discreetly, giving wrestlers a chance to say they're good to keep going. Wrestling is all about the drama, right? Those high-flying moves, the smack talk, and, of course, the injuries that have you on the edge of your seat. But not all injuries in the ring are part of the show. So how do they signal when something actually goes wrong? Enter the dreaded X sign. Wrestlers are pros at making you think they're hurt when they're not. You want it to look real enough to feel it, but if something really goes sideways, there's gotta be a clear signal that this isn't just for show. That's where the iconic X comes in. It's simple but super effective. Refs cross their arms above their heads, forming an X. This tells everyone, hold up, we need medical help, and we need it now. And it's not just the refs who can throw up the X. Since wrestlers don't exactly have radios in their tights, they can flash the X too if they need to. It's basically like a backstage code for, seriously, something's wrong, and it's been a key part of WWE for years. Former WWE producer Arn Anderson explained it perfectly on his podcast. When that X goes up, it's a big deal. It means the match has to stop, and the injured wrestler needs immediate attention. In other words, it's not part of the script. Things just got real. Now let's talk about those times when the X has been used to mess with fans. Yeah, WWE has definitely played with your emotions before, using the X to sell storyline injuries. Think back to when John Cena kept throwing up the X after Kane sent Zack Ryder flying off the stage in a wheelchair. Was it dramatic? Absolutely. Was it real? Nah, just part of the show. But fortunately, that kind of thing doesn't happen much anymore. WWE realized that using the X for fake injuries could cause some confusion, and they've pretty much phased it out for storylines. Jake Clemens, a former NXT referee, even mentioned that during his time in WWE, he was never taught to use the X for anything other than a legit injury. So it looks like WWE has put the toothpaste back in the tube on that one. So next time you're watching a match and see that X go up, pay attention. It's probably the real deal. It's a small gesture with a big meaning in the wild world of wrestling, where the lines between reality and drama are always being blurred. The hand squeeze. Referees in pro wrestling are basically the unsung heroes of the ring. Sure, they count the pins and enforce the rules, but their job goes way beyond what meets the eye. Their number one priority is keeping the wrestlers safe. In fact, It's become so important that many refs are now getting formal first aid training just in case something goes wrong during a match. But refs need a quick and efficient way to check on wrestlers without breaking the flow of the match or giving away anything that's off to the audience. And luckily, they've got a super simple trick for that, and it's something the wrestlers use too. According to a YouTube video from WrestleMania, it's called the Iggy. It sounds mysterious, right? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. The ref or the wrestler delivering the move will put their hand in the hand of the wrestler who just took the hit and wait for a squeeze. If they get that little squeeze back, it's the wrestler's way of saying, "I'm good, keep going." This move is clutch for both wrestlers and refs because things can get intense, and sometimes it's hard to tell if someone is really hurt or just selling the hit. The Iggy is a quick way to check in without stopping the action, keeping everything smooth and safe. It's like a secret handshake in the middle of a fight. No one watching has any idea, but it's crucial for making sure everyone's okay. And here's a fun fact. It's not just the refs who use this. The wrestler who's giving the move often does it too, especially after a big bump. Those intense falls or hits you see in matches. They'll subtly check in on their opponent to make sure everything's cool before continuing. So, while the crowd is going wild over a crazy move, there's this whole quiet communication happening to make sure no one's actually getting hurt. In the fast-paced, high-risk world of pro wrestling, these little signals are a lifeline. The Iggy might not seem like a big deal, but it's a tiny gesture that plays a huge role in keeping things safe and moving smoothly in the ring. Former WWE referee Jake Clemens talked about it. The hand squeeze, from what I understood, was a way to protect the business from nearby fans to check on the performer. I myself use it from time to time, but now I find myself just speaking to talent more often because I feel as if the fans know about the hand squeeze now. Batista's iconic thumbs down. After winning the 2005 Royal Rumble match, Batista stood at a crossroads in February, ready to challenge for a world title at WrestleMania 21. But here's the catch. He had to decide between going after the WWE Championship or, much to the chagrin of his Evolution buddy Triple H, gunning for the game's World Heavyweight Championship. Fast forward to a high-stakes contract signing on Raw, where Batista walked in with contracts for both titles. At first, he seemed to be in sync with Triple H's plans. When the game and Ric Flair gave him a thumbs up, Batista returned the gesture, and it looked like everything was peachy. But then came the plot twist. He suddenly flipped that thumb down, signaling his choice to go after the World Heavyweight title instead. That moment was electric. From that day on, two thumbs down became Batista's rebellious signature move, a bold statement of his independence and defiance. The crowd erupted as the animal made it clear he wasn't just another cog in the evolution machine. He was ready to break free and carve his own path to glory. This iconic turn not only set the stage for one of the most memorable rivalries in wrestling history, but also established Batista as a force to be reckoned with. Who knew a simple thumbs up could lead to such an explosive declaration of independence? The Devil Horns. Whenever the electrifying opening notes of his entrance theme hit, WWE Hall of Famer Edge would throw his hands up and unleash the classic devil horns hand gesture for all his edgeheads to see. Instantly recognizable and forever associated with heavy metal, this symbol brings a hint of mischief, making it the perfect match for the rated R superstar's persona. With his rebellious spirit and edgy style, Edge took that iconic gesture and made it his own, creating a connection with fans that was as intense as his in-ring action. It's not just a sign, it's a declaration of his bold, no-holds-barred approach to wrestling. So, whether you were jamming out to some metal or getting pumped for a match, when you saw those devil horns, you knew you were in for an unforgettable ride with the ultimate opportunist. The Randy Orton Clap. Randy Orton's Snap Power Slam is one of those moves that just makes you go, wow, it's fast, it's explosive, and he pulls it off with such precision that it's become a signature part of his matches. What makes Orton's version stand out is how unique it is, with only Dustin Rhodes doing something similar. The move itself has roots going back to the 1980s with guys like Buzz Sawyer and Rick Steiner, but Orton adds his own twist. literally and figuratively. But here's a fun little secret about the Viper's Power Slam. There's a subtle way to tell whether it's going to land or if Orton's about to miss and go crashing into the mat. Yep, Orton's got a tell, and once you know it, you can't unsee it. It all comes down to a simple hand clap. If Randy's actually going to hit his opponent with the power slam, he'll give a quick clap of the hands right before he executes it. That's the green light for his opponent to keep moving and take the hit. But if there's no clap, well, that's your cue that Orton's opponent is about to stop short, sending him spinning wildly into the mat, missing his mark entirely. It's like the wrestling version of Simon Says, but with a lot more impact. This missed power slam spot is something of a classic in Orton's repertoire. Back in 2003, I needed a finishing move that could end matches, something that could become a staple of my career. Is my take on the Diamond Cutter or the Ace Crusher. It's a move that had been done before, but I put my own spin on it so that I could catch opponents out of nowhere, which is why it became so famous, said Orton about his iconic move. The moment his opponent fakes him out and Orton eats the canvas, always gets a reaction from the crowd. And honestly, it's part of what makes his matches so entertaining. He's perfected the art of making a mistake look dramatic and deliberate, all while keeping the audience fully engaged. So if you're watching an Orton match, keep an eye out for the clap. Whether he's about to deliver his lightning-fast power slam or end up crashing hard, you'll be in the know. John Cena's three-pointer. Forming a circle with your index finger and thumb while keeping the other fingers up is basically the universal sign for good vibes. Did you just drain a sweet three-pointer? Feeling like everything's A-okay? Or maybe you're rocking that Cenation pride. If you answered yes to any of these, then you've definitely flashed this iconic hand sign before. For the WWE Universe, this gesture isn't just for fun. It embodies the three pillars of fanaticism: hustle, loyalty, and respect. It's like a badge of honor that shows you're all about that positive energy. Whether you're cheering for your favorite superstar or just celebrating a little victory in your everyday life, throwing up this sign is a way to connect with fellow fans and spread the good vibes. So next time you see that gesture, remember, it's not just a hand sign, it's a symbol of everything that makes the Cenation so special. Keep hustling, stay loyal, and show that respect. One finger salute. A naive take on Stone Cold. Steve Austin's signature hand sign might lead you to believe he was constantly telling his Attitude Era peers they were number one, but if we're being honest, the truth is way cooler. Austin was the ultimate anti-authority badass, and his hand gesture was a salute to that rebellious spirit. Before he laid a boot to his enemies' stomachs and dropped them with the iconic Stone Cold Stunner, there was nothing Austin enjoyed more than giving his signature salute. This bold gesture was his way of saying, "I'm here to kick some ass and take names." It wasn't just a show of support, it was a declaration of war against anyone who dared to stand in his way. So, whether you were a fan or a foe, that hand sign was a reminder that the Texas rattlesnake wasn't playing around. He was ready to rattle some cages and raise some hell. The squeeze before the leg drop. It's 2006 at WrestleMania 22, and we're in the electric atmosphere of Chicago. Shawn Michaels, the showstopper himself, is ready to shine. But instead of just stealing the show, he takes a little detour to help Vince McMahon make some unforgettable memories in the ring. That's right, Michaels isn't just there for his usual show-stealing antics. He's about to become the man who turns Vince into a legend for the night. Fast forward to the climax of this epic showdown. The tension is palpable as the crowd is on the edge of their seats. Then, in a moment that would go down in WrestleMania history, Shawn climbs up a towering ladder. Seriously, it's like he's reaching for the stars. The arena erupts as he launches himself off, soaring through the air like a superhero. And bam! He nails Vince with a jaw-dropping elbow drop that sends McMahon crashing through a table. It's the kind of moment that makes your heart race and your jaw drop all at once. Of course, Michaels takes the win, but it's not just about the victory, it's about creating a WrestleMania moment that fans will talk about for years. So, whether you're a die-hard wrestling fan or just tuning in for the spectacle, you can't help but love the wild ride that was WrestleMania 22 where Shawn Michaels transformed a match into a legendary showdown that'll be remembered forever. The journalist Dave Meltzer later explained this move. While that sounded and looked impressive, to the wrestlers, it was even more so because McMahon had a garbage can around his head. That meant he actually couldn't see Michaels falling and tense himself to take the blow, which is a big deal. In boxing, the gimmick when you see a boxer stick his chin out and dare the guy to hit it, the bottom line is, if you see the punch coming and ready for it, you can tense yourself. Well, if you're getting way too impressed, don't be, because it isn't what it looks like at first. Vince McMahon was working a lot of the wrestlers regarding the Michaels match. Vince was getting over how gutsy he was taking that elbow with the garbage can over his head, because unlike most who would be taking it, they know when it's coming, so they can tense and prepare. He had to tense for a long period of time, not knowing when it was coming. In actuality, the ref shook Vince's leg right as Michaels was about to land, so he was given a signal. The back slap before the DDT. Next up is the DDT, one of the most iconic moves in wrestling history. Made famous in the mid-1980s by the legendary Jake the Snake Roberts, this move starts with a front face lock and sends the opponent crashing straight down to the mat. Now, whether it looks more like a pile driver or a face-first bump really depends on how adventurous the wrestlers are feeling at that moment. But one thing's for sure, when Jake hit that DDT, it came out of nowhere, much like Randy Orton's infamous RKO, and that unpredictability helped turn him babyface in both Mid-South Wrestling and the WWF. While Jake didn't invent the DDT, he definitely added his own flair that set him apart from others, including Black Gordman, the wrestler usually credited with its creation. Whenever Jake executed the DDT, he'd give a swift slap to his opponent's back at the same time. It was like his signature flourish that made the move not only visually impactful, but also created a little sound effect for added drama. Here's where it gets really interesting. There's a pattern to the DDT that you won't be able to unsee once you catch on. Just like Randy Orton's clapping before a power slam, if you see a wrestler slap their opponent's back while hitting the DDT, you know it's going to land. But if there's no slap, that's your tell that the move has been countered. It's a clever little piece of storytelling in the ring that keeps the audience on their toes. The Ear Cup. Nothing fires up a superstar quite like the roar of a sold-out arena, and few understood that better than Hulk Hogan. Every Coliseum home video from the peak of Hulkamania usually wrapped up with the Hulkster flexing his massive muscles, while Rick Derringer's Real American blasted through the speakers, sending little Hulkamaniacs into pure frenzy. But when Hogan wanted to crank that excitement up to 11, he had a special move up his sleeve. He'd plant one foot, pivot with the other, and start spinning in circles, hitting every corner of the arena with his iconic ear cup gesture, inviting the fans to join in the fun. "Can you hear me now?" he'd seem to ask, and the answer was always a thunderous yes. It was a self-indulgent yet wildly entertaining display that perfectly encapsulated Hogan's larger-than-life persona. Whether you were in the front row or watching from home, you couldn't help but feel that electric connection between the Hulkster and the WWE Universe. It was all about the celebration, the energy, and the love that made Hulkamania run wild. Hooking the leg at the end. If you've ever settled in for some classic WWF wrestling from the 1980s, you're likely familiar with Gorilla Monsoon's iconic commentary. One of his go-to critiques was calling out wrestlers for failing to hook a leg during pin attempts. Now, on the surface, this makes total sense. After all, hooking and elevating the legs to get that weight over the shoulders is a legit strategy straight out of amateur wrestling. But here's where it gets interesting. WWF wrestlers of that era just didn't see it the same way. You're probably thinking, why was that? Well, back then, the WWF had its own unique style, and one of the golden rules was to save the leg hook for the finish of the match like so. This approach created a dramatic flair and added suspense, allowing fans to feel the tension build as the match progressed. Near falls were meant to be exciting moments, but the anticipation of a final pin that involved that signature leg hook was what really got the crowd roaring. While Gorilla's advice was rooted in solid wrestling fundamentals, the WWF's theatrical style was all about keeping the audience on the edge of their seats, waiting for that final, exhilarating moment when a wrestler finally hooked the leg for the win. Dave explained this move too, saying, "You do a near fall and don't hook the leg, and he calls you an idiot for not hooking the leg, and teaches the fans not to pop for your near fall, when the style you are told to do is only hook the leg for the real finish." The wording was that he is trying to show how smart he is by never selling your near falls, thus hurting your match. Bang Bang. From his iconic cowboy boots to his wanted dead or alive tee and even his build hometown of Truth or Consequences, NM, Mick Foley's Cactus Jack persona radiated the vibe of a true desert desperado. This wild, untamed character was the embodiment of hardcore wrestling, and it was hard not to get swept up in his chaotic energy. One of Cactus Jack's signature moves was his infamous two-gun salute, which he'd deliver with flair, complete with his signature verbal flourish of bang bang. When Jack waved his hands like six-shooters, it was a warning shot that sent shivers down the spines of his opponents, letting them know they were in for a wild ride. That quirky salute became a trademark that left competitors scrambling to steer clear of the madman. Whether he was jumping off ladders or brawling through the crowd, Cactus Jack always brought that raw, unpredictable spirit, reminding everyone that he was not just another wrestler. He was a hardcore legend ready to take on anything in his path. The I love you sign. Fan favorite superstars often expressed their gratitude to the WWE Universe, showering them with thanks for their unwavering support. But when it came to Jimmy Superfly Snuka, his message was all about love. While he might not have been the most verbose competitor in the ring, Snuka made up for it with his incredible body language and signature moves. Before launching into his iconic splash from the top rope, Snuka would flash the sign language gesture for "I love you" to his fans, creating a heartwarming connection with the crowd. It was a simple yet powerful way for Superfly to show his appreciation and affection for his supporters. This touching salute became a signature moment, perfectly capturing Snuka's spirit and charisma right before he took flight. With every leap and splash, he reminded everyone that wrestling was about more than just competition. It was about the love shared between a superstar and their fans.